Welcome to Block 30 of our Celebrating the States Block of the Month. This is our version of the Dynamic Massachusetts quilt block. For this quilt block, you will need two fabrics, a light and a dark. We will be cutting the same pieces from each of the fabrics, so I stacked mine so I could cut everything at once. Cut two squares from each fabric that are 5 1/4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. Cut two squares of each fabric that are 5 inches by 5 inches. And finally, we need to cut one square 4 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches from each of the fabrics. Layer the dark and light 5 1/4 inch squares right sides together and cut twice, corner to corner, to make 8 sets of triangles. Once everything is cut, it's time to head to the sewing machine. Make sure you're using 1/4 inch seam allowances throughout the quilt block. The first thing we're going to sew is the 1/4 square triangle units. Start with a flat side and always have the light fabric on top. Make sure to watch all the way through to the end. I will show you all 30 of my blocks laid out in 2 pictures of 15 blocks. I hadn't laid them all out together before, and it was fun to see them all side by side. Cut them apart and head over to the ironing board. We're going to press all of these to the dark fabric. Piece 2 of the triangle units together to make a square. We're making 4 of these squares for the quilt block. Let us know in the comments below if you've been keeping up with your state blocks and how many you've made so far. Now it's time to press these units. I'm pressing mine towards one side. That way I can use my block lock ruler when I'm trimming these up, but you can also press them open. This seam will fit nicely in my block lock ruler for trimming these to 4 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. These blocks will be really close to the exact size you need. You won't be trimming off very much. If you press the seam open, it will be easier to trim the block with a regular square ruler. Now it's time to make the half square triangle blocks. Layer one dark and one light 5 inch square right sides together. You can use the diagonal seam tape as a guide or draw a line corner to corner on the wrong side of the light fabric to have a line to follow. Sew a 1/4 inch away from the center line on both sides of the line. Cut on the center line, and then we're going to press towards the dark fabric. You will end up with 4 half square triangle blocks, and we will use 3 of them in the block. Once they're pressed, trim each of these squares to measure 4 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. Now we have all the pieces we need to construct the block. Trimming squares down often creates a lot of fabric dust. I like to keep a lint roller handy to use on my mat to clean it up. I think it helps prevent those fibers from getting stuck in the self-healing mat. Now it's time to lay out our quilt block. The plain squares will go in opposite corners. The half square triangle blocks are going through the diagonal center of the block. The quarter square triangle blocks form light and dark points of a star. Basically, it's a block cut in half on the diagonal with dark star points on a light background on one half and light star points on a dark background on the other half. Here are the light star points and here are the dark star points. The diagonal line down the center separates the dark half and the light half. We are sewing 3 rows of 3 squares. Pay close attention to make sure the squares are positioned correctly. You will always be sewing a light fabric to a dark fabric. Some of the seams will nest together to help line things up. If you're ever sewing a light fabric to a light fabric or a dark fabric to a dark fabric, stop and check your pieces. Something isn't turned the right way. I had to use my seam ripper twice on my test block, so proceed carefully. Press towards the plain squares or the half square triangle units or away from the quarter square triangle units. Lay it out when you're done pressing and make sure that you can see all the star points and the pieces in the correct position. Just 2 seams left and the Massachusetts block is done. If this is the first state block you've seen, check the description below for a link to the playlist of the other states in the series. I hope you've been keeping up on your blocks. I can't believe we're already on block number 30. We're over halfway through the project. All that's left to do is to press the block. I pressed away from the center row, but you could also press it from the back side and press the seams open. Once pressed, your block should measure 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. It's a little easier to see the 2 halves of the block of the star when you have it set on point. I made this block in 3 different light and dark combinations, so each of the 3 quilts that I'm making will have a different block. Someday when I get the time, I'm going to be using this block for an entire quilt. I think it would be stunning. I finally took the time to lay out my 30 blocks just to see how they'd look. I think I need to make a few more blocks with gold or beige and some lighter blues. It was good to see them all together and see what I need to factor in for future blocks. And I can start to think about how I want to finish them off at the end. We hope you remember to hit the like button, leave a comment for us, share with your quilting friends, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!